Tonight, our journey takes us deep into the heart of a snowy winter to explore the ancient Slavic traditions of a Polish Christmas. But first, shake the snow from your shoulders and come inside. You are safe here in the library. The fire is warm, the shadows are soft, and the world outside cannot touch you. The tome for this tale is already waiting on the desk, bound in deep green velvet and smelling faintly of dried hay and pine. I have lit a candle for you so we can read the faded text. Let us open the cover. Our story begins. Close your eyes and let the world outside your door fade into a distant, blurred memory. Imagine, if you will, a vastness that stretches beyond the reach of the mind, a place where the map ends and the dreaming begins. We find ourselves standing upon the threshold of a realm defined by two eternal elements, a land where the very foundations of existence are carved from ancient wood and draped in an endless shroud of white. This is the heart of the Polish winter, a season that does not merely visit the landscape but possesses it, transforming every valley, every hill, and every hidden clearing into a sanctuary of absolute isolation. The air here is a physical presence, a cold so pure and crystalline that it feels like breathing in fine, powdered glass. It carries no scent of the modern world, no echo of iron or coal, but instead smells of the deep, slumbering earth and the sharp, resinous perfume of frozen pine needles. To look upon this horizon is to witness the white silence in its most majestic form. It is a world of monochrome beauty where the sky is a heavy, velvet curtain of pearl grey, sagging under the weight of 1,000 unfallen snowfalls. The earth beneath your feet is no longer solid ground, but a soft, yielding ocean of white, a landscape of dunes and hollows that have swallowed the roads, the fences, and the boundaries of men. In this land of wood and snow, time seems to have folded in on itself, retreating into a quiet corner to rest. There is no urgency here. The forests of Poland, those ancient sentinels of oak, hornbeam, and birch, stand like a congregation of giants frozen in a moment of deep prayer. Their branches are heavy, laden with thick blankets of frost that sparkle with a dim, ghostly light, even on the darkest afternoon. You can feel the weight of the timber, the density of the trunks that have stood for hundreds of years, witnessing the rise and fall of empires while remaining utterly indifferent to the passage of time. The wood is the skeleton of this world, dark and gnarled, providing the only contrast to the overwhelming purity of the snow. Isolation here is not a tragedy, but a profound, heavy grace. It is the feeling of being the very last soul on an abandoned planet, or perhaps the first. Every step you take is a deliberate intrusion into a stillness so profound it feels sacred. The snow cushions your movements, absorbing the sound of your heartbeat and the soft rustle of your woolen cloak. You are wrapped in a cocoon of solitude, a loneliness that is as warm and comforting as a thick quilt. There is no one to call your name, no one to demand your attention. There is only the long, slow exhale of the forest and the knowledge that for miles in every direction the world is asleep under its winter veil. As you move deeper into the embrace of the trees, the architecture of the forest begins to change your perception of sound. High above, in the secret reaches of the canopy, the wind is a living, breathing creature. It does not blow so much as it sighs, a long, mournful lament that travels through the crowns of the pines like the rushing of a distant, spectral sea. You can hear the groaning of the elder boughs as they sway under the invisible hand of the gale, a deep wooden creak that vibrates in the very marrow of your bones. Up there, the world is restless and wild, a place of movement and chaotic energy where the wind harries the needles and tosses the fine powder of the snow into swirling, ghostly dances. But down here, upon the forest floor, the world is a tomb of perfect, breathless quiet. The dense branches act as a filter, stripping away the violence of the storm until only the ghost of a breeze remains. The silence at the base of the trees is thick, almost tactile, like the heavy dust in a forgotten wing of a great library. It is a silence that has a weight to it, pressing against your ears and settling in your lungs. You could drop a silver coin into the drifts and hear nothing but the softest, most delicate hiss as it vanished into the white. It is a space where even a whisper feels like a shout, and where the only rhythm is the slow, steady pulse of your own life. Your eyes drift downward, tracing the pristine surface of the snow, until you find a break in the perfection. There, leading out from the shadow of a hollow trunk, is a line of deep, purposeful indentations. They are the tracks of a wolf, a traveller who moved through this wood long before you arrived. You lean down, your knees sinking into the soft powder, to inspect the shape of a single paw print. The edges are crisp and sharp, frozen into a cast by the biting air. You can see the indentation of the heavy pads and the sharp prick of the claws, a silent testament to a creature built for this unforgiving climate. There is a strange intimacy in following these marks, a sense of connection to a wild, predatory grace that moves through the shadows without ever being seen. You imagine the wolf's thick, grey fur matted with frost, its breath blooming in the air like a cloud of silver smoke, and its yellow eyes scanning the horizon for the slightest flicker of movement. The tracks lead you forward, winding through the labyrinth of the timber, guiding you toward a slight rise in the land. As you crest the hill, the scent of the world begins to shift. The antiseptic smell of the snow is suddenly pierced by something familiar, something ancient and deeply human. It is the smell of a dying fire, the rich, smoky aroma of seasoned oak and dry birch being consumed by flames. You lift your gaze to the pale, heavy sky and see it, a thin, wavering ribbon of grey smoke rising from behind a cluster of trees. It is a fragile thing, easily broken by the wind, yet it is the most beautiful sight in this frozen wilderness. That smoke is a signal of warmth, of soup simmering in a heavy iron pot, and of the low, hushed murmur of voices gathered around a hearth. It is the first sign of a human settlement, a small cluster of wooden huts huddled together against the cold like sheep in a storm. The sight of it brings a sudden, sharp ache of longing to your chest, a reminder that even in the heart of the white silence there is a pulse of life struggling to stay alight. You begin to walk toward that distant plume, your boots crunching rhythmically through the crust of the snow, leaving your own trail alongside the wolf's, as the forest slowly begins to give way to the tiny, flickering shadows of a home. The heavy, iron-bound door of the cottage stands before you like a silent guardian, its surface etched with the deep, weathered lines of 100 winters. As you reach out to touch the latch, the cold of the metal seeps through your thick woolen mittens, a sharp and biting reminder of the frozen world you're about to leave behind. You press your weight against the timber, and with a low, grounding groan of protest from the hinges, the door swings inward. In that single fleeting moment of transition, the world changes. You step across the threshold, and the chaotic, biting howl of the Polish winter is severed as if by a knife. Behind you, the door thuds shut, a heavy and final sound that seals the frost and the wind into the darkness of the forest. Suddenly, you are enveloped in a silence so profound and so thick that it feels as though you have been submerged in deep, warm water. It is a muffled velvet quiet, a stillness that has been cultivated over decades within these four walls. The air here does not move with the frantic energy of the storm. It is still and heavy, pressing against your skin with a gentle, invisible weight that commands your body to finally, mercifully, let go. The first thing to greet you is not a sound or a sight, but the heat. It does not merely touch you. It strikes you like a physical embrace, a wave of golden warmth that washes over your frozen face and makes your breath catch in your throat. This is a living heat, a deep and radiant glow that seems to emanate from the very heart of the earth. As you stand there unmoving in the sudden dimness, you feel the frost beginning to weep from your eyelashes and the tips of your hair. The transition is almost painful, a tingling, prickling sensation in your cheeks and fingertips as the blood begins to stir and flow once more. You can feel the moisture of the melting snow as it turns to fine mist on the surface of your cloak, the heavy wool becoming damp and releasing the sharp, clean scent of the high mountain air into the room. It is a moment of total surrender, a surrender to the sanctuary of the interior. where the cruel indifference of the ice is replaced by the fierce protective cradling of the hearth. Your lungs, which have been constricted by the thin, freezing air of the woods, now expand fully, drawing in a breath that is rich, thick, and heavy with the essence of home. As your eyes begin to adjust to the amber twilight of the room, the scent of the house begins to reveal its secrets to you in layers, like a story being whispered in your ear. The dominant note is the ancient resinous perfume of the pine and spruce logs that form the very bones of the cottage. Over the years, the heat of the fire has drawn the sap from the timber, baking it into the walls until the entire structure smells like a sun-drenched forest captured in a jar. It is a sweet, sticky aroma, reminiscent of golden honey and dried needles, a scent that speaks of permanence and the slow, steady growth of the trees. Mingled with this resinous base is the omnipresent, comforting ghost of wood smoke. It is not the harsh, stinging smoke of a forest fire, but a mellow, seasoned fragrance, the result of 1,000 fires that have burned to white ash in the belly of the stone stove. It smells of dried birch bark and the memories of long, dark nights, an incense that hallows the space and marks it as a place of refuge. It clings to the rafters and the hand-woven tapestries, a scent that promises safety to anyone who crosses the door. Deeper still, beneath the wood and the smoke, lies the nourishing, earthy heart of the kitchen. Your senses are drawn toward the heavy iron pot that hangs suspended over the embers, its surface dull and soot-blackened. From beneath its lid, a thin, dancing wisp of steam escapes, carrying with it the scent of a long, slow transformation. It is the aroma of fermented cabbage and dried forest mushrooms, an earthy and pungent fragrance that speaks of the autumn harvest and the careful preservation of life. You can smell the sweetness of onions that have been softened in lard until they are translucent and golden, and the sharp, spicy kick of peppercorns and bay leaves. There is the faint, sour tang of sourdough bread rising in a wooden bowl near the heat, a scent that is both humble and sacred. These are the smells of survival, the fragrances of a landscape that has been tamed and brought indoors to simmer and stew until it becomes a balm for the weary traveller. It is a scent that settles in the pit of your stomach, a warm and grounding reminder that here you will be fed and you will be cared for. As you move further into the room, your boots making a soft, rhythmic thud against the wide floorboards, the auditory landscape of the sanctuary begins to unfold. The silence you first encountered was only a canvas, and now the fire begins to paint its music. Upon it, the hearth is a cavern of shifting oranges and deep, bruised reds, where the logs are undergoing their final, glowing transfiguration. You hear the sharp, sudden crack of a pine knot, a sound like a small, distant firework that sends a spray of golden sparks dancing against the soot-stained stones. This is followed by the long, low hiss of moisture escaping from a piece of unseasoned wood, a sound like a secret being whispered into a hollow. The fire has a voice of its own, a rhythmic, pulsing thrum that vibrates through the floor and into the soles of your feet. It is a low, guttural growl that speaks of power and protection, a domestic beast that keeps the shadows at bay. You find yourself drawn to it, your hands reaching out toward the light as if to catch the sound itself, feeling the way the air thrums with the energy of the burning timber. The walls themselves seem to join in this quiet symphony. In the deep stillness you can hear the wood of the house shifting and settling, a series of minute creaks and groans as the logs expand in the warmth. It is the sound of the house breathing, a slow and deliberate movement that reminds you that this structure was once alive, and in some way it remains so. The thatch of the roof, buried under several feet of heavy snow, creates a soundproof barrier that turns the interior into a sensory deprivation chamber, where the only thing you hear is the life within. There is the rhythmic, metallic tick of a heavy clock on the mantel, its pendulum swinging with a slow, hypnotic gravity that seems to regulate the very passage of time. And then there is the most delicate sound of all, the soft, rhythmic bubbling of the pot on the hearth, a gentle liquid percussion that underscores the crackle of the flames. Each bubble that rises to the surface and breaks is a small note in a song of contentment, a sound that tells you there is no need to hurry, no need to worry about the world beyond the door. You sink into a heavy wooden chair, its arms worn smooth by the touch of many hands, and you feel the texture of the grain beneath your fingers. The wood is warm to the touch, having soaked up the heat of the fire until it feels almost like living skin. You trace the swirling patterns of the growth rings, thinking of the decades of sun and rain that created this strength. The low light of the hearth casts long, flickering shadows that dance across the ceiling, turning the bunches of dried herbs hanging from the rafters into strange, swaying ghosts. Everything here is tactile. Everything is solid. The world of the white silence with its shifting snows and invisible winds feels like a dream from which you have finally awakened. Here, in the sanctuary of wood, the senses are not assaulted, but cherished. You are wrapped in a tapestry of smoke, resin, and heat, a cocoon of sensory richness that lulls you into a state of profound, meditative peace. The weight of your journey falls away, replaced by the simple, heavy reality of the present moment as the fire continues its slow, crackling monologue, and the scent of the soup promises a night of deep, undisturbed rest. Beyond the thick timber walls of our sanctuary, the world is surrendering to the deepest and most profound shadows it will ever know. We have reached the turning of the great wheel, the moment the ancients called the Winter Solstice. It is a time of cosmic tension, a breathless pause where the breath of the universe seems to catch in its throat. On this, the longest of all nights, the darkness is not merely an absence of light, but a physical weight, a heavy, violet velvet that presses against the windows and leans its cold shoulder against the door. You can feel the hunger of the night, a vast and silent ocean of blackness that seeks to swallow the last embers of the world. It is a time when the boundary between the living and the eternal becomes as thin as a layer of morning frost, and the spirits of the forest gather at the edge of the clearing to watch the flickering orange glow of human life. Yet within this overwhelming gloom, there is a seed of fierce, quiet hope. This is the festival of the triumph of light, the birth of the young sun, who will eventually grow strong enough to break the back of winter. In the pagan heart of this land, the night is a crucible, a dark vessel in which the golden light of the coming year is being forged. We sit in the amber dimness, our eyes drawn to the small dancing flames of the tallow candles that line the mantel. Each flame is a tiny, defiant soldier, its wick charring slowly as it casts a halo of warmth against the surrounding gloom. You can hear the soft, rhythmic sputter of the melting wax as it pools in the brass holders, a sound as delicate as the falling of a single autumn leaf. The light is fragile, yes, but it is steady. It illuminates the edges of the heavy oak table and catches the silver thread in the tapestries, creating a world of shifting gold and deep, comforting bronze. We wait in a state of holy expectation, knowing that once the clock strikes the midnight hour of the soul, the darkness will begin its long, slow retreat, and the days will begin to stretch their limbs once more. The air in the room is charged with this sense of waiting, a tension that is both ancient and deeply familiar. It is the feeling of being a small part of a much larger story, a story written in the stars and the movement of the planetary bodies. You feel the cold air seeping through the gaps in the window frames, a sharp, icy needle that contrasts with the heavy warmth of the hearth. It smells of the coming snow and the metallic tang of the frozen sky, but here, by the fire, the air is soft and rich. It carries the scent of dried orange peels and the spicy woody aroma of cloves that have been pressed into the rinds. There is a faint, sweet smell of honey being warmed in a cup, a scent that reminds you of the bees slumbering in their hives deep beneath the drifts. We are cradled in this sensory cocoon, a space where the passage of time is measured not by minutes, but by the slow, graceful dance of the shadows on the timbered ceiling. As we move deeper into the evening, our attention is drawn to the corner of the room, a place held in special reverence during these sacred nights. There, resting against the deep shadows of the timber walls, stands the golden sheaf. It is a magnificent bundle of the finest wheat, glowing with the memory of the summer sun. harvested at the peak of the warm season and saved specifically for this moment of deep midwinter stillness. It is a beautiful, intricate construction of wheat, rye, and oats, its golden stalks tied together with colourful ribbons and dried flowers that have managed to retain a ghost of their former vibrancy. The golden sheaf is more than just a decoration. It is the grandfather, a living bridge between the world of the living and the world of those who have passed into the great silence. It is the physical presence of the ancestors, invited back into the home to share in the warmth of the solstice fire. You move closer to the golden sheaf, your footsteps silent upon the floor, until you are near enough to smell the soul of the harvest. It is a dry, earthy fragrance, a scent of sun-drenched fields and the honest dust of the threshing floor. It smells of the late August heat, of the humming of insects and the heavy, rhythmic swing of the scythe. In the dead of winter, this smell is a miracle, a preserved memory of life and abundance that fills your senses and grounds you to the earth. You reach out a hand, your fingers brushing against the rough, papery texture of the grain heads. They are brittle and delicate, crackling with a soft, musical rustle as you touch them, a sound like the whispering of 1,000 hidden voices. It is as if the stalks themselves are speaking, recounting the stories of the summers they witnessed and the hands that tended them. In the presence of the golden sheaf, the silence of the room takes on a new quality. It is no longer an empty silence, but one that is populated by the invisible weight of the past. This is the hour for whispering to the ancestors, for offering words of gratitude and seeking the wisdom of those who walked these forests long before our names were even a thought. You lean your forehead against the cool, dark wood of the wall and let your breath mingle with the scent of the straw. You speak in a voice so low it is barely more than a ripple in the air, a series of soft, sibilant sounds that carry your secrets into the golden heart of the sheaf. You tell them of your joys and your fears, of the weight of the winter and the hope for the spring, and as you speak, you feel a sense of profound peace wash over you, a feeling of being watched over by a benevolent, silent congregation. The fire continues its low, rhythmic monologue, the wood popping and hissing as the sap is consumed. The smoke from the hearth rises in a thin, lazy spiral, mingling with the dry scent of the golden sheaf to create a fragrance that is both sacred and domestic. It is a smell that has remained unchanged for 1,000 years, the same scent that filled the nostrils of the first settlers who carved their homes from the Polish timber. You can almost see them, the spectral figures of the grandfathers and grandmothers, sitting just beyond the edge of the light, their eyes reflecting the glow of the embers. They are the guardians of the hearth, the keepers of the traditions that ensure the sun will always return. The golden sheaf stands as a sentinel, a golden totem of continuity, in a world that often feels fractured and fleeting. As the night deepens toward its darkest point, the connection between the grain and the fire becomes almost tactile. The golden stalks of the golden sheaf catch the flickering light, shimmering with a dull, burnished glow that makes them appear as though they are made of solid gold. The shadows of the grain heads stretch across the floor, long and distorted, like the fingers of a giant reaching out to touch the warmth of the stove. You feel the heavy, comforting presence of the straw behind you as you return to your seat, its dry, sun-baked essence acting as a shield against the freezing void outside. The world may be locked in a battle of shadows and ice, but here, in the company of the ancestors and the scent of the harvest, you are safe. You are part of the eternal cycle, a single thread in a vast golden tapestry that stretches back into the mists of time and forward into the promise of a new, bright morning. The time has come for the arrival of the silent guest, the one who carries the weight of the summer sun into the heart of the winter darkness. You hear the heavy thud of boots on the porch outside, a rhythmic pounding that shakes the loose snow from the eaves. Then the latch lifts with a sharp, metallic click, and the door swings open once more. For a brief, breathtaking second, the freezing breath of the forest rushes back into the room, a swirling ghost of white crystals that dances in the orange light of the hearth. But the figure standing in the doorway is not empty-handed. Carried with a reverence usually reserved for a sleeping child or a holy relic, the golden sheaf enters the home. This is the Golden King, the master of the harvest, and as he crosses the threshold, the very atmosphere of the cottage seems to bow in greeting. The man carrying the sheaf moves with a slow, deliberate gravity. He does not rush, for this is a ritual that has been performed in these forests for 1,000 years. A dance of shadows and light that connects the living to the deep, dark roots of the earth. The straw rustles with a dry, melodic sound, a chorus of 1,000 brittle voices whispering of the fields and the wind. As he stands in the center of the room, the frost on his coat beginning to glisten like diamonds, he speaks the ancient greeting. His voice is a low, resonant rumble that vibrates through the floorboards and settles in the very marrow of your bones. For happiness, for health, for this new year, he whispers, his breath blooming in a pale cloud. For happiness, for health, for this new year. The words are not merely a greeting, they are a verbal seal, an incantation intended to ward off the hunger of the winter and invite the abundance of the coming spring. You can feel the weight of each syllable, the way they hang in the warm, smoke-scented air like gold coins. To wish for happiness is to ask for the strength to endure the long nights. To wish for health is to honor the resilience of the body against the creeping cold. And as he speaks of the new year, He is not speaking of a date on a calendar, but of the return of the light, the moment the sun begins its long climb back to the zenith of the sky. The greeting ripples through the room, catching in the corners and mingling with the scent of the pine resin, a promise of continuity in a world that feels fragile and cold. You watch as the golden sheaf is carried toward its throne. In every Polish home, there is a space held in absolute sanctity, a place where the physical world meets the divine. This is the holy corner, the eastern nook of the main room, where the first rays of the morning sun will eventually strike the wood. It is a place of deep shadows and quiet power, often adorned with hand-carved icons or dried bunches of blessed herbs. As the Golden King is lowered into this corner, the dry stalks of wheat and rye scrape gently against the dark, hewn logs of the wall. The sound is like the brushing of a wing, a delicate and secret noise that marks the moment the house becomes complete. The visual contrast is startling and beautiful. The walls of the cottage are dark, stained by the soot of a generation of fires and the natural deepening of the timber over time. They are the colour of rich earth, of old leather, and of the forest at midnight. But against this backdrop of sombre brown, the golden sheaf glows with a radiant, almost supernatural intensity. It is a pillar of pure spun gold. The firelight from the hearth catches the polished surfaces of the grain heads, making them sparkle as if they were encrusted with amber. It is as if a piece of the August sun has been stolen from the past and placed here to keep the darkness at bay. You find yourself staring at the intricate weaving of the stalks, the way they twist and turn in a complex geometry that seems to mimic the patterns of the stars. This sheaf is not merely an object of beauty, it is the physical embodiment of the ancestors, a golden bridge that spans the chasm between the world of the seen and the unseen. In the pagan heart of the Polish winter, it was believed that the spirits of the forefathers resided within the last sheaf of the harvest. By bringing the golden sheaf into the corner, the family is welcoming their lineage back to their table. You can almost feel the presence of those who came before, a silent, spectral congregation gathered in the shadows of the eaves. They are there in the scent of the dry straw, a smell that is both ancient and comforting, like the pages of a book that has been kept in a sunlit attic for a century. The golden sheaf provides them with a place to rest, a sanctuary where they can watch over their descendants and share in the warmth of the solstice fire. The grain itself tells a story of survival. You lean in closer, your eyes tracing the individual heads of the rye, each one heavy and bristling with fine hair-like awns. You can smell the dust of the fields, a dry and earthy perfume that manages to cut through the heavy scent of the cooking pot and the wood smoke. It is the smell of the life force of the earth, preserved in a state of golden sleep. In this corner, the golden sheaf becomes a totem of hope. It is a reminder that even when the earth is locked in a tomb of ice and the wolves are howling at the edge of the clearing, the seed of the future is safe. The harvest of the past is the promise of the harvest to come. As the evening settles and the fire burns down to a deep, pulsing crimson, the Golden King remains in his corner, a silent and watchful guardian. The shadows cast by the stalks are long and flickering, stretching across the ceiling like the branches of a great invisible tree. You feel a sense of profound security in its presence, a feeling that as long as the grain is in the house, the winter cannot truly break you. The isolation of the Polish landscape, the miles of snow and the white silence we discussed before, all seem less daunting now. The golden sheaf is a beacon of human persistence, a golden flame that does not flicker in the wind. The room is silent now, save for the rhythmic crackle of the wood and the soft, almost imperceptible rustle of the straw as it settles into its new home. You find yourself whispering the greeting under your breath, a soft echo of the master's voice. Na szczęście, na zdrowie. The words feel smooth on your tongue, like polished stones. You are part of the ritual now, a witness to the moment the house became a temple. The Golden King sits upon his throne of wood, his golden crown reflecting the dying light of the fire, and in the deep velvet darkness of the holy corner, the ancestors begin their long, silent vigil over the turning of the year. Would you like me to continue with the next sub-chapter, perhaps describing the specific foods that are placed before the golden sheaf as an offering, or the stories that are told in its golden shadow as the night reaches its deepest point? While the Golden King of the harvest stands in his sacred corner, our eyes are drawn upward, away from the heavy wooden floorboards, and toward the dark, hand-hewn rafters of the ceiling. In this land of ancient shadows, beauty does not always rise from the earth. Sometimes it descends from the heavens. Before the arrival of the upright trees we know today, there was a more mysterious and ethereal guest in the winter home. Suspended from the central beam of the ceiling, hanging directly above the heavy oak table where the family gathers, is a crown of evergreen. We call it the hanging forest, a piece of the wild woodland that has been turned upside down and invited to watch over our winter dreams. It is usually the crowning tip of a silver fir or a sturdy spruce, severed from its trunk and inverted so that its needles point toward the floor like 1,000 green fingers reaching down to touch the warmth of the hearth. To look up at this hanging forest is to see the world through a prism of ancient tradition. It sways ever so slightly in the rising heat of the fire, a slow and hypnotic rotation that casts long, spindly shadows across the walls. The scent it releases is intoxicating, a sharp and primal perfume of crushed needles, cold sap, and the deep, dark secrets of the high forest. When the heat of the room touches the frozen boughs, the resin begins to weep, forming small amber beads that cling to the bark like sticky tears. You can smell the very essence of the wilderness, a fragrance that is both antiseptic and deeply comforting. It is a smell that clears the mind and opens the heart, a reminder that even in the dead of winter, the green world is not dead, but merely waiting in a state of suspended grace. The act of hanging this branch is a ritual of protection and an inversion of the natural order. By turning the tree upside down, the ancients believed they were creating a bridge between the celestial and the terrestrial, a way for the blessings of the sky to flow down the trunk and into the home. There is a strange, quiet magic in the way the branches fan out, creating a canopy of emerald velvet that shelters the table below. You can hear the soft, rhythmic creak of the hemp rope as it holds the weight of the timber, a sound like a distant boat straining at its moorings. It is a delicate sound, easily lost in the crackle of the fire, yet it provides a steady heartbeat to the room, a reminder of the tension between the weight of the wood and the lightness of the air. As you stand beneath this green umbrella, you notice that it is not bare. It is adorned with the humble treasures of the earth, each one chosen with a specific purpose and a deep, symbolic resonance. There is no glass here, no artificial glitter, and no tinsel to catch the light. Instead, the ornaments are as natural as the branch itself, representing the simple, honest beauty of the cycle of life. The hanging forest is a living map of the family's hopes and their respect for the natural world. Every object tied to its needles is a prayer, a silent wish for the year that is to come, and a celebration of the strength required to survive the year that is passing. The most vibrant of these offerings are the apples. They are the deep, bruised red of a winter sunset, their skins polished with a soft cloth until they glow with a dull, waxy luster in the firelight. These are the last fruits of the autumn, saved in the cool darkness of the cellar for this very night. To the people of the wood, the apple is the ultimate symbol of health, vitality, and the beating heart of the earth. When you reach up to touch one, the skin feels cool and smooth, a stark contrast to the rough, prickly texture of the spruce needles. You can almost smell the ghost of the orchard in them, a faint, sweet scent of fermented sun and damp earth. They hang heavy on their strings, pulling the branches downward, their weight a physical manifestation of the abundance that the family hopes to carry through the lean months of the winter. They are the promise of the blood flowing through the veins and the sun returning to the sky. Nestled among the red globes of the apples are the walnuts, their hard, wrinkled shells left in their natural state, or sometimes wrapped in thin, fragile leaves of beaten gold or silver. The walnut is the silent thinker of the forest, its shell a fortress that protects a core, shaped uncannily like the human brain. For centuries, these nuts have been seen as symbols of wisdom, hidden knowledge, and the enduring strength of the mind. To crack a walnut is to reveal a secret, and to hang them from the forest canopy is to invite clarity and understanding into the home. You see them tucked into the secret places where the branches meet the stem, their rough tan surfaces catching the flickering orange light. They represent the internal life, the thoughts that grow in the silence of the long winter nights, and the wisdom that is passed down through the generations like a precious, unyielding seed. Between the apples and the walnuts there are chains made of golden straw, the same straw that forms the body of the king in the corner. These chains are delicate, intricate works of art, woven by fingers that have spent the autumn evenings by the light of a single candle. They represent the interconnectedness of all things, the way the harvest supports the home, and the home supports the soul. There are also stars made of white wafer or stiffened paper, their geometric shapes representing the celestial bodies that guide the traveller through the dark. Everything is held together by simple thread or bits of dried vine, creating a tapestry of texture that invites the hand to reach out and explore. You feel the prick of the needles, the roundness of the fruit, and the crinkle of the straw, a sensory symphony that grounds you in the present moment. The beauty of the hanging forest lies in its simplicity and its transience. Unlike the heavy, permanent furniture of the room, this decoration is a fleeting guest. As the weeks pass, the needles will turn from a vibrant emerald to a dusty, brittle brown. They will begin to fall one by one, landing on the table like tiny, silent arrows. The apples will begin to shrivel, their sweet scent deepening into something more complex and earthy. The walnuts will be taken down and cracked open during the long evenings of January, their shells cast into the fire to provide a final aromatic flare of light. This slow decay is not a cause for sadness, but a celebration of the passage of time. The hanging forest gives of itself until there is nothing left, a sacrifice that mirrors the way the earth gives of itself to sustain the people. Sitting under this inverted canopy, the world feels smaller, more intimate, and infinitely more safe. The hanging forest creates a room within a room, a sacred space where the family can gather to tell stories and share their bread. The shadows it casts are soft and dancing, turning the ceiling into a forest floor where spectral wolves and birds of prey might roam. You feel a sense of profound peace as you watch the branch sway, the rhythmic movement lulling you into a state of deep, meditative calm. The cold wind may howl against the timber walls, and the snow may pile high against the door, but here, under the protection of the green boughs, the red apples, and the wise walnuts, you are part of a sanctuary that cannot be breached. The hanging forest is a testament to the fact that even in the most isolated reaches of the Polish wilderness, there is a desire for beauty and a need for meaning. It is a way of bringing the wild interior of the soul into harmony with the wild exterior of the world. As the firelight fades into a low, pulsing crimson, the green needles seem to glow with an inner light, a ghostly radiance that speaks of the life force that persists even in the heart of the frost. You close your eyes, the scent of pine and apple swirling in your mind, and you realize that the forest is not something you have left behind. It is here, hanging above you, a silent guardian that will watch over you until the first pale light of the new sun breaks across the eastern horizon. Now that the rafters are heavy with the scent of the inverted forest and the corner is occupied by the golden presence of the Harvest King, we must turn our gaze downward to the very foundation of the room. In this sacred hour of the winter solstice, the hard, polished timber of the floor is about to undergo a soft and fragrant transformation. You hear the heavy, muffled thud of a large bundle being dropped near the hearth, a sound that carries the weight of the summer fields. This is the gathering of the sun-dried grasses, the humble spirits of the meadow that have been sleeping in the high, dusty lofts of the barn since the heat of July. As the twine is cut, the bundle breathes, expanding and spilling across the floorboards in a chaotic golden tide. The act of spreading this hay is a quiet, meditative ritual, a way of returning the home to the earth. You watch as the master of the house moves through the room, his hands reaching into the depths of the pile and scattering the dry stalks with a rhythmic, sweeping motion. It is as if he is sowing a field in the middle of a blizzard, creating a carpet of gold that covers the dark, weathered wood of the floor. There is a specific sound to this movement, a dry and sibilant rustle that fills the silence of the cottage. It is a brittle, ancient song, the collective whisper of a million blades of grass that once danced in the warm southern winds. As the hay settles, it creates a landscape of texture and light, catching the flickering orange glow of the fire and turning the room into a sun-drenched clearing in the heart of a frozen world. As you step onto this new surface, the sensation is one of profound, grounding comfort. The coldness of the timber is gone, replaced by a soft, yielding cushion that springs back beneath your weight. If you're wearing thick, hand-knitted woolen socks, you can feel the individual stalks through the fabric, a gentle, prickly reminder of the wildness of the meadow. It is a tactile experience that pulls you back to the land, stripping away the formalities of the house and replacing them with the raw, honest simplicity of the barn. The hay creates a layer of insulation, trapping the warmth of the hearth and holding it against the floor, making the entire room feel like a cozy nest. You find yourself walking more slowly, more deliberately, as if you are wading through a shallow, golden stream. The scent that rises from the floor is overwhelming, a sensory time machine that transports you away from the biting frost and the iron-grey sky. It is the perfume of a Polish summer, captured and preserved in a dry, brittle state. You can smell the sweetness of the clover, the herbal sharpness of the yarrow, and the honeyed notes of meadowsweet. There is an underlying scent of sun-baked earth and the clean, wholesome dust of the barn. In the deep isolation of winter, this fragrance is a powerful medicine for the soul. It reminds the heart that the sun has not forgotten the world, but is merely resting, hidden behind the heavy curtains of the clouds. Every time you move, every time you shift your weight, a fresh wave of this summer essence is released into the air, mingling with the wood smoke and the pine resin to create a symphony of aromas that define the winter sanctuary. But the spreading of the hay is not limited to the floor. The most delicate part of the ritual takes place at the long, heavy table that stands in the center of the room. You watch as a thick handful of the finest, most fragrant grass is selected and brought to the table. It is spread thinly and evenly across the rough oak surface, a golden layer that acts as a foundation for the evening to come. Then, with a slow and reverent movement, the white linen tablecloth is brought out. This cloth is a masterpiece of domestic art, bleached by the sun and the morning dew until it is the colour of a fresh snowfall. As it is draped over the hay, a transformation occurs. The linen does not lie flat. Instead, it is bumpy and uneven, the golden stalks of the grass creating a miniature landscape of ridges and valleys beneath the white surface. This act of placing hay under the cloth is a profound gesture of humility and remembrance. It is a physical echo of the lowliest of beginnings, a reminder that the most sacred events often take place in the most humble of settings. The contrast between the pristine white linen and the rough, earthy hay is a reflection of the human condition itself, our constant striving for purity and light, grounded in the stubborn, beautiful reality of the earth. When you rest your hands upon the table, you can feel the presence of the grass beneath the cloth. It is a subtle, hidden texture, a secret that only those gathered at the table share. It makes the act of eating, of breaking bread, feel like a sacred communion with the natural world. The hay on the floor and the hay on the table also serve as an invitation to the silent guests of the evening. In the deep folklore of this land, it is believed that on this longest night, the spirits of the ancestors and the guardians of the woods come to rest within the home. The soft carpet of grass provides them with a comfortable place to sit, a sanctuary where they can feel the warmth of the fire and listen to the stories of their descendants. The rustling you hear in the corner, just beyond the edge of the firelight, might not be the wind or the settling of the house. It might be the movement of invisible feet upon the golden stalks. The hay blurs the line between the domestic and the wild, creating a space where the human and the spirit worlds can coexist in a state of peaceful, fragrant silence. There is also a profound silence that comes with the spreading of the hay. In a room with bare wooden floors, every footstep, every movement of a chair, and every drop of a spoon creates a sharp, echoing sound. But the hay is a master of absorption. It swallows the noise, turning the cottage into a place of muffled velvet acoustics. The room becomes a temple of quiet. You can hear the low, rhythmic breathing of the people around you, the soft crackle of the fire, and the occasional delicate hiss of a candle. The hay creates a sonic cocoon, protecting the inhabitants of the cottage from the harshness of the outside world and the loudness of their own thoughts. It encourages a state of deep, meditative reflection, a slow and heavy peace that is the true essence of the winter solstice. As the night deepens, the hay begins to take on the amber glow of the embers. The floor looks like a field of molten gold, and the shadows of the chairs and the tables stretch out across the grass like long, dark fingers. You realize that the room has become a microcosm of the entire world. You have the forest in the hanging branch, the harvest in the corner, and the very meadows beneath your feet. The isolation of the Polish winter is no longer a source of fear, but a source of richness. You are surrounded by the essences of the seasons, a tapestry of scents and textures that speak of the continuity of life. The hay is the final layer of this sanctuary, a golden foundation that holds the entire experience together. In the morning, the hay will be gathered up, but for now, it is the soul of the house. It will be carried out to the stable and shared with the animals, ensuring that they too participate in the blessings of the solstice. But for this long, dark night, it belongs to you and the spirits who share your hearth. You lean back in your chair, feeling the softness of the grass against your ankles and the scent of July in your lungs. The white silence outside is vast and cold, but here, upon the carpet of hay, the world is warm, gold, and infinitely deep. Would you like me to continue with the next sub-chapter, perhaps detailing the ritual of the first star or the specific arrangement of the 12 traditional dishes upon the hay-lined table? The afternoon light has begun to bleed away, draining from the world like water through a sieve. We find ourselves in the most fragile hour of the day, a time of profound suspension known as the blue twilight. Within the wooden walls of the cottage, a deep and heavy silence has taken root, a quiet that is far more than the mere absence of noise. It is a waiting silence, an expectant hush that settles over the family as they sit in the deepening gloom. No one speaks above a whisper. The heavy oak chairs do not creak, and the children sit motionless upon the hay-strewn floor, their eyes fixed on the darkening rectangles of the windows. This is the vigil, the final period of watching and wondering before the great celebration begins. The air in the room feels thick, almost pressurized, as if the house itself is holding its breath in anticipation of a celestial signal. Underlying this stillness is the physical reality of the fast. Since the first pale light of dawn, no food has crossed the lips of those within this sanctuary. This is the strict fast, a voluntary hollow that we create within ourselves to make room for the sacred. You can feel the hunger now, not as a sharp pain, but as a light, airy sensation in the pit of your stomach. It is a sharpening of the senses, a clarifying of the mind that only comes when the body is empty. Your sense of smell becomes hyperacute. You can detect the individual notes of the dried herbs in the rafters, the earthy sweetness of the hay on the floor, and the rich, tantalizing aroma of the soup simmering in the heavy iron pot. The hunger makes the world feel more vivid, more intense. It is as if the absence of bread has made the soul more porous, allowing the mystery of the night to seep into your very bones. You are a hollow vessel, a bell waiting to be struck by the first note of the evening. As you sit in the semi-darkness, your gaze drifts to the window pane. The glass is cold, a thin barrier between the warmth of the hearth and the biting indifference of the Polish winter. Frost has begun to bloom across the surface in delicate crystalline patterns, tiny ferns of ice that sparkle with a ghostly subterranean light. Beyond the glass, the sky has turned a deep, bruised indigo, a colour so intense it seems to vibrate. The forest at the edge of the clearing has become a wall of solid black, its jagged peaks silhouetted against the fading velvet of the horizon. The world outside is a void, a vast and frozen ocean where nothing moves and nothing breathes. You feel the isolation of the house more keenly now, the sense of being a tiny, flickering spark of life in the centre of an infinite frozen dark. The waiting continues, measured by the slow rhythmic tick of the clock and the occasional soft hiss of a log in the fire. The room is a study in shadow, the golden king in the corner, the golden sheaf, has become a dark and looming shape, its stalks catching only the faintest glimmers of the dying light. The hanging forest above the table sways almost imperceptibly, its red apples looking like dark, suspended hearts in the gloom. We are all searching for the same thing, our necks craned, our eyes scanning the eastern sky where the darkness is thickest. We are looking for the eye of the heavens, the celestial messenger that will break the fast and release the joy that has been building all through the long, quiet day. Then it happens. A child, perhaps more attuned to the shifting of the light, lets out a soft, sharp intake of breath. A finger points toward a break in the clouds, just above the line of the frozen pines. There, trembling in the deep violet void, is a single prick of white light. It is fragile at first, a tiny diamond of fire that seems to flicker and fade, but as you watch, it grows steady and bright. It is the first star. In the traditions of this land, this is the Gwiazdka, the little star that carries the weight of prophecy and the promise of a new beginning. Its appearance is a silent shout that echoes through the house, The vigil is over, the darkness has been pierced, and the light has officially returned to the world. A wave of relief and quiet energy ripples through the room. The silence is broken, not by noise, but by a collective, long-held exhale. The time for waiting has passed, and the time for ritual has begun. The master of the house rises from his chair, his movements slow and reverent. He reaches for a small unlit candle that sits in a simple brass holder on the mantel. This is no ordinary candle. It is a pillar of pure, unrefined beeswax, harvested from the hives that sit at the edge of the forest. The wax is the color of a summer sun, a deep and saturated yellow that feels tacky and warm to the touch. It is the physical essence of 1,000 flowers, a solid block of sunlight and meadow song that has been waiting all winter to be released. As he brings a small splinter of wood from the fire to the wick, there is a moment of profound focus. The flame catches a tiny blue spirit that quickly grows into a tall, steady pyramid of golden light. As the heat of the fire melts the wax, a new scent begins to flood the room, pushing back the smell of wood smoke and old timber. It is the sweet, heavy perfume of honey and clover, a fragrance that smells like a June afternoon in the middle of a December night. It is a scent that speaks of the bees slumbering in their dark, waxen cities and the nectar of flowers that have long since withered. The candle does not just provide light, it provides an atmosphere of sanctity and sweetness. It is the scent of life in its most concentrated form. The golden light of the beeswax candle transforms the room. The shadows that were heavy and oppressive only moments ago now dance and play across the walls. The white linen on the table, with the hay hidden beneath it, glows with a soft ivory radiance. The golden sheaf in the corner seems to wake up, its golden stalks shimmering as if they were catching the rays of the actual sun. The faces of those gathered around the table are illuminated from below, their features softened and hallowed by the amber glow. This single flame is the bridge between the celestial star in the sky and the domestic hearth of the home. It is a small, portable sun that we have lit to guide us through the longest night of the year. The candle is placed in the center of the table, directly upon the white cloth, its light reflecting in the polished surfaces of the spoons and the deep reds of the hanging apples. This is the signal for the feast to begin. But first there is a moment of standing in the presence of the light. We look at one another across the flame, our eyes bright with the reflection of the candle. The hunger we felt earlier has shifted. It is no longer a void, but a readiness to receive. The first star is watching us from the velvet sky, and the beeswax candle is whispering its honeyed secrets into the air. The boundary between the heavens and the earth has been closed by this single golden thread of light. Everything is in its place. The hay is soft beneath our feet. The ancestors are watching from the corner, and the first star has given us its blessing. The room is filled with the scent of the summer meadow and the promise of the coming year. As we prepare to break the first piece of the white wafer, the world outside, the white silence and the biting wind, feels like a distant memory. Here, in the circle of the candles' glow, there is only warmth, only sweetness, and the profound, quiet joy of a night that has finally, mercifully, begun to turn toward the light. Would you like me to continue with the next subchapter, perhaps describing the ritual of breaking the Christmas wafer and the exchange of blessings that follows the appearance of the star? The light of the beeswax candle flickers, its golden flame dancing in the slight draughts that wander through the timber walls, and we turn to the first and most sacred act of the evening, before a single spoonful of soup is lifted, before the heavy iron pots are uncovered. We must reach for the thin rectangular sheets of the white wafer that sit upon the hay-lined table. This is the bread of peace, a substance so fragile and light that it feels almost weightless in your hand, like the discarded wing of a winter moth. You pick up a piece, feeling its dry, embossed surface against your fingertips. It is patterned with scenes of the Nativity, tiny figures pressed into the flour and water, a landscape of faith captured in a wafer thin enough for the candlelight to shine through. You turn to the person beside you, and for a moment the world falls into a profound, expectant silence. You offer them a corner of your wafer, and they offer you a corner of theirs. As you reach out to break a small fragment, the sound is a delicate, crystalline snap, a noise so small it would be lost in any other room. But here it echoes like the cracking of the first ice on a pond. It is a sound of shared vulnerability, a promise of mutual support through the long months to come. We do not just share the bread, we share our very breath. You lean in close, your foreheads almost touching, and you whisper your wishes. These are not grand, loud proclamations, but soft, sibilant secrets meant only for the two of you. I wish you a heart that stays warm through the frost you might breathe, or I wish you the strength of the ancient oak. The words mingle with the scent of the honey and the beeswax, becoming a part of the air we breathe. Beside the stack of wafers sits a small, hand-carved wooden bowl filled with the finest honey of the past summer. It is a deep, translucent amber, its surface reflecting the orange glow of the hearth like a pool of liquid sun. Following the ancient custom, you dip your finger into the sticky, golden syrup and place a single drop upon the fragment of the wafer. The honey is slow and heavy, stretching in a thin, shimmering thread before it settles. When you place the wafer on your tongue, the sensation is a complex symphony of textures. The bread is dry and papery at first, melting away in an instant to reveal the fierce, concentrated sweetness of the honey. It is an explosion of life in the middle of a frozen night, a taste of the summer meadows that coats your throat and warms your chest. This is the taste of happiness, a literal sweetness intended to ward off the bitterness of the world outside. The honey lingers, a floral and earthy memory of 1,000 bees, reminding you that even in the heart of winter, the sweetness of life is never truly lost. Now, the feast itself begins to arrive, a procession of 12 dishes that represent the abundance of the earth and the months of the year. The center of the table is dominated by a large, deep earthenware bowl filled with kutia. This is a dish of the deep past, a mixture of boiled wheat, honey, crushed nuts, and thousands of tiny midnight black poppy seeds. You lean over the bowl, and the steam carries the scent of fermented grain and sweet earth. To the people of the Polish forests, the poppy seed is a symbol of the great transition, the bridge between the waking world and the realm of the eternal. The tiny seeds are the seeds of sleep, a representation of the quiet, dark peace of the underworld and the dreams of the ancestors. As you take a spoonful, the texture is grainy and rich, each tiny seed popping between your teeth with a subtle, rhythmic crunch. It is a heavy, grounding food, a taste of the soil and the silence of the dormant fields. It tastes of eternity, of the long wait beneath the snow, and of the deep, dreamless rest that the earth takes before the resurrection of spring. Beside the kutia, there are dishes filled with the dark, savory treasures of the forest floor. You find the mushrooms, harvested in the damp, misty mornings of September, and dried near the rafters until they were as hard as stones. Now they have been rehydrated in the soup, their dark, leather-like skins becoming soft and succulent once more. They carry with them the very soul of the woods. When you bite into a mushroom, you are tasting the damp moss, the decaying leaves, and the secret underground networks of the fungi. It is a wild, primitive flavor, a dark and earthy contrast to the sweetness of the honey. The mushrooms are the messengers of the forest, a reminder that even when the trees are bare and the animals are in hibernation, the life of the woods remains present and powerful. The broth is thick and dark, smelling of wild thyme and black pepper, a liquid warmth that seems to seep into every corner of your being. One of the most profound aspects of this meal is the way it is consumed. There is no hierarchy here, no separation of the individual. In many of the oldest homes, the family does not eat from separate plates, but from a single communal vessel. We gather around the table, our spoons moving in a slow, rhythmic dance as we dip into the same bowls of kutia, the same pots of soup. This is the ultimate expression of community, a physical weaving together of our lives. You see the hands of the elders, gnarled and weathered like the bark of an elm, moving alongside the small, smooth hands of the children. We are sharing the same nourishment, breathing the same steam, and participating in the same ancient cycle of survival. The clink of the spoons against the ceramic is the only music we need, a steady domestic percussion that underscores the whispered conversations and the crackle of the fire. As you look around the table, your eyes eventually rest on a place that remains untouched. In the center of the table, or perhaps at the head, there sits an extra plate, a clean wooden spoon, and a small fragment of the white wafer. This is the empty setting, the place for the wanderer. In the deep hospitality of the Polish winter, no one is ever truly alone. This seat is kept vacant for the unexpected traveller who might knock at the door, seeking refuge from the white silence of the storm. It is a testament to the belief that every stranger might be a messenger from the divine, or perhaps a spirit in disguise. To leave this chair empty is to keep the heart open, to acknowledge that our sanctuary is only truly a sanctuary if it is willing to be shared. But the empty plate holds a deeper, more melancholic meaning as well. It is the place for those who are no longer with us at the table, those whose voices have faded into the rustle of the golden sheaf in the corner. It is a space for the ancestors, for the grandfathers and grandmothers who carved this home from the wilderness, and for the friends who are far away, separated from us by miles of frozen forest or the boundary of the great beyond. We look at the empty chair, and for a moment the joy of the feast is tempered by a soft, beautiful sadness. We remember their names, their laughter, and the way they used to break the wafer. The empty setting is not a void, it is a presence. It is the weight of memory given a physical form. The light of the beeswax candle catches the white surface of the empty plate, making it glow with a ghostly radiance, a silent invitation for the spirits to join us in our warmth. The meal continues in this slow, deliberate fashion, a long and sensory journey through the flavors of the land. We eat until we are heavy with the richness of the poppy seeds and the warmth of the honey. The hunger of the fast has been replaced by a profound sense of satiety, a feeling of being filled not just with food, but with the presence of our kin and the weight of our history. The room is thick with the scent of wood smoke, resin, and the sweet, lingering perfume of the beeswax. The isolation of the Polish winter is still there, pressing against the walls, but it no longer feels cold. Here, at the table, under the protection of the hanging forest and the watchful eye of the first star, we have created a world that is whole. The taste of the honey is still on your tongue, a lingering promise of happiness as the night outside reaches its deepest, most silent point. The feast has reached its quiet zenith, the heavy earthenware bowls half empty, and the scent of poppy seeds lingering in the warm, still air. We are wrapped in the profound contentment of the hearth, yet a new sound begins to bleed through the thick timber walls. At first, it is so faint that you might mistake it for the singing of the wind in the chimney, or the rhythmic crackle of a dying log. It is a thin, silver vibration, a delicate tinkle of distant bells that seems to shiver across the frozen surface of the snow. You hold your breath, your spoon poised halfway to your lips as the sound grows. It is a rhythmic, hypnotic chime, muffled by the heavy drifts but persistent, drawing closer with every heartbeat. It is the music of the wanderers, the messengers of the night who move between the worlds when the sun is at its lowest. You rise from the table, the hay rustling softly beneath your feet, and move toward the small, frost-rimmed window. The glass is cold against your forehead, a sharp, crystalline bite that clears the lingering warmth of the honey from your mind. You press your face to the pane, peering out into the violet darkness of the clearing. There, emerging from the jagged shadows of the pines, is a light that does not belong to the earth. It is a wandering star, a large, multicolored lantern mounted on a long wooden pole, glowing from within like a captured piece of the aurora. It rotates slowly, casting long, rhythmic sweeps of crimson, emerald, and gold across the pristine white of the snow. The light is soft and diffused, turning the frozen wilderness into a theatre of shifting shadows and spectral colours. Behind the rotating star, a procession of figures begins to take shape, appearing like ghosts conjured from the very soul of the forest. They do not walk so much as they loom out of the dark, their forms distorted by the flickering light and the heavy furs they wear. Leading the group is a creature that seems to have crawled out of the most ancient, primal dreams of the land. It is a beast of horn and hair, a dark, shaggy presence with a long wooden snout and eyes that glint with a mischievous, subterranean light. As it moves, the creature's jaw snaps shut with a dry, hollow click, a sound like a branch breaking in the dead of winter. You can almost feel the texture of its coarse, matted fur and the cold, hard weight of its wooden horns. It is a manifestation of the wild, untamed energy of the earth, a reminder that even in our cozy sanctuary, the spirit of the wilderness is never far away. Beside the horned beast walks a figure draped in robes of tattered gold, holding the pole of the star with a steady, weathered hand. This is the master of the light, his face hidden behind a mask of bark or painted cloth, his movements slow and ceremonial. And then, hovering on the edge of the light like a moth, is a pale, ethereal shape clothed in white. It is the angel, its wings made of stiffened paper or white goose feathers that rustle with a dry, papery sound in the freezing wind. The angel's face is a pale oval in the darkness, serene and unmoving, a stark contrast to the chaotic, jumping energy of the shaggy beast. Together, they form a living bridge between the holy and the profane, the animal and the divine, moving across the snow toward your door with a heavy, purposeful gait. The sound of the bells is now a loud silver percussion just outside the timber. You can hear the rhythmic thud of their boots on the porch, a heavy vibrating sound that shakes the frost from the window frames. The door, which has been the boundary of our safety all night, feels thin and fragile as they gather on the other side. There is no knock, only a sudden, profound silence, followed by the low, guttural chanting of an ancient carol. The voices are raw and weather-beaten, carrying the scent of the biting wind and the metallic tang of the frozen sky. They sing of the turning year, of the birth of the light, and of the blessings that will fall upon this house like the spring rain. You reach for the heavy iron latch, and as the door swings open, the white silence rushes into the room once more. The cold is a physical blow, a sudden icy needle that pierces the heavy warmth of the beeswax and the wood smoke. For a moment, the interior of the cottage and the exterior of the night are one. The figures stand in the doorway, their breath blooming in the air like thick silver clouds. Up close, they are even more magnificent and terrifying. You can smell the scent of the frozen forest clinging to their furs, a sharp, resinous aroma of pine needles and damp earth. The horned beast lunges forward with a playful snap of its jaw, its wooden teeth clicking just inches from the threshold, while the angel stands perfectly still, the flickering starlight reflecting in its glass bead eyes. This is the moment of exchange, the ancient contract between the settled and the wandering. You reach back to the table and take up a loaf of the heavy dark rye bread, still warm from the embers of the stove. The crust is thick and dusted with flour, smelling of the honest, sun-drenched grain of the Polish fields. As you step forward to offer it, the heat of the bread meets the freezing air, sending a thin, dancing ribbon of steam toward the rafters. You place the loaf into the calloused, gloved hands of the star-bearer. The contact is brief, a fleeting touch of warmth against the biting cold, but it is the heartbeat of the evening. In exchange for their songs and their presence, you give them the fruit of the harvest, the physical manifestation of the home's abundance. The star-bearer bows his head in a silent gesture of gratitude, the rotating lantern casting a splash of deep violet across his masked face. With a final resonant jingle of the bells and a parting snap of the wooden jaw, the procession begins to turn away. They descend the steps of the porch, their boots crunching into the deep powder of the drifts. You stand in the doorway, the cold air swirling around your ankles, watching as the light of the star begins to recede. The colours, the reds, the greens, and the golds grow smaller and more concentrated as they move back toward the line of the trees. The figures lose their distinct shapes, dissolving back into the shifting shadows of the night until they are once again mere ghosts of the winter imagination. The sound of the bells begins to fade, becoming a thin, silvery thread that is slowly swallowed by the immense silence of the forest. It grows fainter and fainter, a distant heartbeat that finally vanishes into the white silence. You pull the door shut, the heavy timber thudding home with a finality that restores the sanctuary of the interior. The sudden return of the quiet is startling, a thick and velvet blanket that settles over your ears. The room feels warmer now, the scent of the beeswax candle and the hay seeming more intense after the intrusion of the freezing wind. You walk back to the window and watch the last tiny glimmer of the wandering star disappear behind a distant hill, leaving the world to the darkness and the stars. The visit has left a lingering energy in the room, a sense that the boundaries of the world have been briefly expanded. The horned beast and the paper angel have taken a piece of your warmth into the night, and in return they have left a blessing of wildness and wonder. You return to your seat at the table, your hands still carrying the ghost of the cold from the doorway. The hay beneath your feet feels softer, more substantial, and the light of the candle seems to shine with a new, more resilient brilliance. The longest night is still unfolding, but the visit of the star has confirmed that we are not alone in this vast, frozen landscape. The messengers have passed through, and the promise of the new year has been sealed with the breaking of bread and the ringing of silver bells. The journey to the heart of the winter celebration begins not with a step, but with the rhythmic, hypnotic glide of the sleigh through the velvet dark. Imagine yourself tucked deep into a mountain of heavy wolf pelts and thick woolen blankets, the world outside a blurred streak of silver and charcoal. This is the sana, the traditional winter carriage of the Polish nobility, a vessel of wood and iron that carries us across the frozen sea of the plains toward the glowing windows of the manor house. The air is so cold it feels like a physical weight against your cheeks, yet beneath the furs you are cocooned in a pocket of stagnant warmth. You can hear the rhythmic, muffled thud of the horses' hooves as they strike the packed snow, a sound like a heartbeat echoing through the hollow chest of the earth. Above the heavy breathing of the beasts, the sleigh bells sing a constant shimmering melody, a thin and crystalline silver sound that cuts through the immense heavy silence of the surrounding forest. As the manor house, the ancient dwar emerges from the shadows. It looks like a constellation of amber stars fallen into the drifts. Torches are held aloft by servants at the gate, their orange flames whipping in the wind and casting long, dancing shadows that leap across the whitewashed walls. The scent of the night is a sharp, intoxicating blend of freezing ozone, the acrid tang of torch smoke, and the deep, earthy musk of horse sweat. You feel the sleigh slow, the runners making one final long hiss against the snow before coming to a rest. Stepping out of the furs, the sudden transition to the stillness of the ground is jarring. Your boots sink into the crisp crust of the snow, a dry and musical crunch that signals your arrival at the threshold of the noble sanctuary. Entering the great hall of the manor is like stepping into a warm, fragrant dream. The biting cold of the sauna is instantly replaced by a wave of heat so dense it feels like a physical embrace. The air here is a complex tapestry of scents. The rich, sweet aroma of burning birch logs, the spicy tang of cloves and cinnamon from the kitchen, and the ancient, heavy smell of beeswax and old library books. The walls, panelled in dark, polished oak that has soaked up the sunlight of 300 summers, glow with a deep, inner radiance in the candlelight. You are led toward the long table, the centre of the world on this sacred night. There is a specific, hushed gravity to the way the family gathers, a ritual of movement that has been perfected over generations. No one rushes. Each seat is taken with a slow and deliberate grace. The rustle of silk and the soft creak of leather boots being the only sounds in the expectant quiet. This is the ritual of the sitting, a moment where the hierarchy of the world is acknowledged and then softened by the shared holiness of the night. The master of the house stands at the head of the table, his face illuminated by the tall golden candles. Before the first word of prayer is spoken, there is a profound pause, a moment where the silence of the forest outside seems to be invited into the room to bear witness. You look down at the table, and your eyes are met by a sight that is both opulent and deeply, anciently humble. Stretching the entire length of the oak boards is a cloth of the finest, most delicate linen. It is white as the snow in the clearing, bleached by the sun and the morning dew until it reflects the candlelight with a soft ivory sheen. It is smooth to the touch, cool and elegant, representing the high station and the refined culture of the noble house. But beneath this layer of sophisticated elegance lies a secret that connects the high-born lord to the lowliest peasant in the furthest reaches of the wood. As you rest your hands upon the table, the tips of your fingers do not find a flat, unyielding surface. Instead, you feel a complex and rhythmic topography of bumps and ridges beneath the fabric. This is the layer of dry, sun-drenched hay that has been spread across the wood before the linen was laid. You can feel the individual stalks through the thin, expensive weave of the cloth, a tactile reminder of the earth that sustains all life. When you press down, the hay gives way with a soft internal crackle, a sound that is both dry and melodic. It is a sensory bridge between the refined world of the manor and the raw, unyielding reality of the land. This hay carries a double weight of meaning, a perfect fusion of the ancient and the sacred. To the noble mind, it is a representation of the manger, the humble bed of straw where the holy child was laid in a distant, dusty stable. It is a physical act of humility, a way of bringing the lowliness of the divine birth into the centre of their own wealth. Yet, beneath this Christian layer, the hay hums with an even older frequency. It is the same grass that was spread by the ancestors to invite the spirits of the fields into the home, a pagan remnant of the harvest that refuses to be forgotten. The scent of the hay, even through the linen, is unmistakable. It is a warm, summer perfume of dried clover, meadowsweet, and the honest dust of the barn. It is a fragrance that cuts through the richness of the feast, grounding the soul and reminding everyone gathered that they are, in the end, children of the soil and the seasons. The touch of the hay through the linen is a profound sensory contradiction. Your palms feel the smoothness of the silk-like flax, while your fingers trace the rough, prickly outlines of the stalks. It is a marriage of the soft and the sharp, the cultivated and the wild. As you sit there, waiting for the first star to appear and the bread to be broken, you find yourself tracing the patterns of the hidden grass. You follow a single long stem of rye as it meanders under the white surface, feeling the way it provides a secret golden skeleton to the table. This is the true heart of the noble Wigilia, the understanding that all the silver, all the silk, and all the lineage in the world are built upon the humble foundation of the grain and the grass. The room is silent now, save for the rhythmic pop of the fire and the low, heavy ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. The light of the candles catches the silver goblets, turning the wine within them into liquid rubies, but your attention remains on the table itself. The white linen looks like a fresh snowfall that has drifted over a summer field, a landscape of memory and hope. You can smell the sweetness of the hay mingling with the scent of the beeswax, a combination that feels like the very essence of the Polish winter. It is a scent of preservation, of life held in a state of golden stasis, while the world outside is locked in ice. As the master of the house prepares to rise and begin the breaking of the wafer, the connection between the people and the hidden grass becomes almost electric. We are all waiting, our hands resting upon the linen, our fingers feeling the ancient rustle of the meadow beneath. The isolation of the manor house, surrounded by miles of white silence and guarded by the jagged peaks of the forest, feels like a sacred privilege. Here, in the noble hall, the Sanna has brought us to a place where the past and the present are woven together as tightly as the stalks in the hay. The ritual of the table is about to begin, and as you close your eyes, the scent of the summer fields fills your mind, a golden promise that the light will return, even to the highest and most ancient of houses. In the elegant, high-ceilinged parlours of the 19th century Warsaw townhouses, a new silhouette has begun to emerge from the winter shadows, a transformation that marks the shifting tides of time and tradition. While the country manors and rural cottages still cling to the hanging forests suspended from the rafters, the city has embraced a guest from the West, a tradition travelling from the German lands to take root in the polished parquetry of the urban elite. This is the upright tree, a sentinel of emerald green that no longer reaches down from the heavens but stands tall and proud upon the floor, its base anchored in a heavy cast-iron stand that is often hidden beneath a skirt of white silk or velvet. To bring this tree into the home is to invite a different kind of magic into the sanctuary of the parlour. It is no longer a fragment of the wild forest, but a carefully curated monument to domestic beauty, a bridge between the untamed woods and the sophisticated geometry of the city. You can smell the difference as soon as the tree is brought in from the cold, slushy streets of the capital. It carries the sharp, crystalline scent of the northern forests, a fragrance of resin and frozen sap that is so potent it seems to cut through the lingering aromas of expensive French perfumes and the faint metallic tang of the gaslights. As the warmth of the room touches the needles, the tree begins to breathe, releasing a heavy pine-scented incense that fills every corner of the house, from the velvet curtains of the drawing room to the dark, book-lined walls of the study. You reach out to touch a branch, feeling the springy resilience of the wood and the slight, sticky residue of the sap on your fingertips. It is a tactile encounter with the living world, a vertical pillar of life, standing defiant against the stone and brick of the urban landscape. The decoration of this standing tree has undergone a metamorphosis as well, reflecting the industrial ingenuity and the refined tastes of the 19th century. The humble red apples and rough walnuts of the past are being replaced by wonders of glass and light. These are the first baubles, fragile orbs of blown glass that have travelled in wooden crates filled with sawdust from the workshops of distant glass blowers. You pick one up, and its weight is almost non-existent, a hollow bubble of air captured within a thin, translucent skin. It feels cool and unnervingly smooth against your palm, a stark contrast to the prickly texture of the spruce needles. These glass spheres are often silvered on the inside, creating a mirror-like surface that reflects the entire room in a distorted miniature curve. In the curve of a single bauble, you can see the flickering hearth, the heavy mahogany furniture, and your own wide-eyed reflection, all captured in a tiny, shimmering universe. As the candles are lit upon the branches held in place by delicate tin clips, the tree becomes a cathedral of light and glass. The flames do not just burn, they dance and multiply within the surfaces of the ornaments. You hear the soft, melodic clink of one glass sphere brushing against another in the rising heat, a sound like distant ice breaking on the Vistula River. There are glass icicles that drip from the boughs, catching the light and turning it into 1,000 tiny rainbows that crawl across the ceiling. There are birds made of spun glass with tails of real silk and delicate stars that seem to hum with a quiet internal radiance. The tree is no longer just a piece of nature, it is a work of art, a shimmering tapestry of texture that represents the golden age of Warsaw's prosperity and its longing for a beauty that is both modern and eternal. While the interior of the townhouse is a cocoon of light and pine-scented warmth, the world outside the window is undergoing its own slow, rhythmic transformation. Looking through the heavy panes of glass, you watch as the 19th century city prepares for the arrival of the Holy Night. The streets of Warsaw, usually a chaotic symphony of iron-rimmed carriage wheels shouting merchants and the rhythmic thud of horses' hooves on the cobblestones, are beginning to succumb to a heavy velvet hush. It is the hour of the twilight, that blue and bruised time of day when the gaslights begin to flicker into life. You can see the lamplighter moving down the Krakowski Przedmieście, his long pole reaching up to wake the sleeping flames, each one blooming in its glass lantern with a soft, sibilant hiss that you can almost hear through the walls. The sensory landscape of the city at this hour is a complex and melancholic blend. The air smells of coal smoke from 1,000 chimneys, a heavy and gritty aroma that hangs in the damp air, mingling with the scent of roasted chestnuts being sold on the street corners. You can hear the distant, muffled ringing of church bells from the towers of Old Town, their voices overlapping in a complex bronze harmony that signals the end of the day's commerce. The markets, which only hours ago were a frenzy of activity as families bartered for the last carp and the finest poppy seeds, are now closing their shutters. The frantic energy of the city is draining away, replaced by a sense of shared purpose and quiet anticipation. The people on the street move more quickly now, their heads ducked into high fur collars, their boots making a soft shushing sound in the grey slush of the gutters as they hurry toward their own patches of candlelight. As the darkness deepens, the city becomes a landscape of silhouettes and shadows. The grand palaces and the narrow tenement houses alike seem to draw closer together, seeking warmth in the gloom. The windows of the city begin to glow one by one, 1,000 amber eyes opening in the dark, each one representing a sanctuary where a tree is being lit and a table is being set. You feel the isolation of the urban winter, a loneliness that is shared by 1,000,000 souls. The vastness of the city, with its labyrinthine streets and its cold stone monuments, is suddenly made small and intimate by the arrival of the night. The white silence of the countryside has found its way into the heart of the capital, dampening the echoes of the carriages and turning the bustling metropolis into a quiet, breathing organism. Within your own parlour, the silence is thick and comforting, broken only by the rhythmic tick of the marble clock and the occasional pop of the fire. You sit near the window, caught between the shimmering, glass-laden world of the tree and the fading indigo world of the street. The transition is almost complete. The hustle of the 19th century, the progress, the industry, the noise, has been paused by the ancient command of the winter solstice. You feel the weight of the history around you, the way the city itself seems to remember the centuries of winters that have come before. The glass baubles on the tree catch a final stray beam of light from a passing carriage lamp, flashing with a sudden, brilliant intensity before settling back into the amber glow of the room. The tree stands there, a vertical bridge between the old ways and the new, its needles smelling of the wild forest and its glass ornaments reflecting the sophistication of the town. You realize that even here, in the heart of a modernizing Warsaw, the essence of the celebration remains unchanged. It is still about the light in the darkness, the scent of the evergreen, and the quiet, breathless waiting for the first star to appear over the rooftops of the city. The city is asleep now, wrapped in a blanket of coal smoke and soft falling snow, leaving you alone with the shimmering tree and the profound, heavy peace of the golden age. The time has come to leave the sanctuary of the flickering hearth and the sweet, heavy scent of the beeswax candle. As the hour of midnight approaches, a different kind of preparation begins, one that requires us to wrap ourselves in the rugged, unyielding protection of the earth. You reach for your heavy sheepskin coat, which has been warming near the stove. As you lift it, you feel its immense, grounding weight, a burden that feels more like armor than clothing. The leather is thick and stiff, cured over many months and etched with the faint, lingering scent of lanolin, wood smoke, and the deep, musky aroma of the flock. It is a garment of the old world, a second skin that has seen a dozen winters and will likely see a dozen more. When you slide your arms into the sleeves, the fleece inside is a dense cream-coloured forest of wool, soft yet firm, immediately trapping the residual heat of the house against your skin. You wrap a long, hand-woven scarf of coarse sheep's wool around your neck, tucking it deep into the high collar of the coat until only your eyes and the bridge of your nose remain exposed to the air. The wool is slightly scratchy, a tactile reminder of the labor that went into its making, smelling faintly of the lavender sprigs that kept it safe in the cedar chest during the summer months. You pull on your thick mittens, felted so tightly that they feel like solid blocks of warmth, and you prepare your heart for the transition. Behind you, the room is a masterpiece of amber light and domestic peace. The golden sheaf stands in his corner, the golden grain catching the last of the dying embers, and the scent of the honey and poppy seeds remains a sweet ghost in the air. For a fleeting second you hesitate, loath to leave the cradle of the fire, but the call of the night is a sacred command that cannot be ignored. You reach for the iron latch of the door, and as you press it down, the metal is so cold it feels as though it might fuse to your skin. The door swings open with a slow, mournful groan, and in that instant the world you knew is replaced by its polar opposite. The transition is a physical shock, a violent slap of reality that steals the breath from your lungs. The heat of the house rushes past you into the dark, a visible cloud of golden steam that is instantly devoured by the freezing void. The cold does not merely touch you, it hunts you. It is a crystalline, predatory force that seeks out the smallest gap in your woolens, a biting needle that pricks at your eyes and turns the moisture on your lashes into tiny, stinging diamonds. The air is so thin and pure, it feels like breathing in powdered silver, a sharp and antiseptic sensation that makes your chest ache with a cold, hollow beauty. As you step out onto the porch, the silence of the forest has changed. It is no longer the white silence of the afternoon, but a vibrant electric quiet that hums with the intensity of the frost. You look down at your boots, and the first step you take into the fresh snow is a sensory revelation. Under the immense pressure of the cold, the snow has become a musical instrument. It does not crunch so much as it shrieks and creaks, a high-pitched rhythmic skzip that resonates through the soles of your boots and vibrates in your very teeth. It is the sound of billions of tiny ice crystals being crushed together, a dry and brittle percussion that marks your entry into the kingdom of the ice. You stand for a moment in the dark, your breath blooming before you in a thick spectral cloud, watching as the vapor drifts away like a ghost seeking refuge among the frozen pines. Looking out across the valley, you see that you are not alone in this freezing wilderness. From every cluster of trees, from every hidden hollow where a cottage huddles against the drifts, tiny points of orange light are beginning to emerge. These are the torches, the Wigilia, made of resinous pine branches that have been prepared for this very journey. One by one, they are lit, their flames licking at the dark and casting long, frantic shadows across the snow. You watch as these individual sparks begin to descend the hillsides, moving with a slow and rhythmic gravity toward the central path that leads to the village. It is as if the stars themselves have fallen from the indigo sky and are now walking the earth, a terrestrial galaxy moving through the white silence of the Polish night. As you reach the main path and join the procession, you find yourself becoming part of a river of fire. This is the river of torches, a slow-moving artery of light that pulses with the collective heartbeat of the village. The scent of the night changes once more, the antiseptic purity of the frost now mingled with the wild, primitive smell of burning pitch. It is a thick and resinous aroma, a scent of ancient forests being consumed by the flame, a smoky incense that hallows the road. You can see the faces of your neighbours illuminated by the leaping orange light, their features softened and made heroic by the shadows. No one speaks. The weight of the night and the holiness of the hour have rendered words unnecessary. There is only the sound of the march, the collective rhythmic creaking of hundreds of boots on the frozen snow, a sound like the grinding of some vast celestial clockwork. In this river of fire, the isolation that defined the day is finally dissolved. You are no longer a single soul struggling against the winter. You are a cell in a larger organism, a thread in a tapestry of shared faith and survival. You feel the warmth emanating from the torches around you, a communal heat that provides a fragile shield against the biting wind. The rhythmic sound of the footsteps becomes a hypnotic mantra, a pulse that connects you to the people walking before you and the people walking behind. You see the elders leaning on their staffs, their sheepskin coats heavy with the weight of years, and the children perched on the shoulders of their fathers, their eyes wide and reflecting the dancing flames. This is the village in its most primal and unified state, a tribe moving through the darkness toward a common destination. The path winds upward toward the crest of the hill where the wooden church stands, its dark steeple reaching for the stars. The church is a silhouette of ancient timber, its windows glowing with a soft internal radiance that looks like liquid gold. As the river of torches approaches the gates, the light intensifies, the hundreds of flames coming together to create a halo of warmth that seems to push back the very boundaries of the night. You can feel the energy of the crowd, a quiet and intense vibration that speaks of hope, of continuity, and of the fierce resolve to endure the winter. The cold is still there, pressing its icy fingers against your face, but it no longer feels threatening. You are wrapped in the kojuch of the community, protected by the fire and the shared breath of your kin. You reach the church doors, and the sound of the bells begins to ring out, a deep and resonant bronze music that shakes the snow from the nearby branches. The vibration of the bells travels through the air and into your chest, a physical heartbeat that echoes the pulse of the marching feet. You stand for a moment at the threshold, looking back at the long winding trail of light you have just travelled. The river of fire stretches back into the dark, a glowing ribbon that connects the hearth of every home to the altar of the church. It is a sight of profound, hypnotic beauty, a testament to the human spirit's ability to create light in the heart of the deepest darkness. You turn toward the interior of the church, the scent of incense and old wood pulling you forward, ready to surrender the cold of the night for the warmth of the pasterka, the shepherd's mass, as the year finally turns toward the light. The heavy iron-studded doors of the sanctuary groan open one final time, and as you cross this final threshold, the world of the white silence is left behind in a swirl of crystalline dust. You step from the infinite freezing void into the embrace of the stone sanctuary, and the first thing that greets you is a sensory collision so profound it feels like a physical weight. The air inside is thick, a dense and layered atmosphere that has been building for centuries within these hallowed walls. The sharp, antiseptic scent of the frost that clings to your sheepskin coat meets the heavy, narcotic perfume of the incense. It is a fragrance of the deep past, frankincense and myrrh, resinous and sweet, rising in lazy blue-grey ribbons from the silver censers. This smoke carries the essence of ancient forests and sun-baked resins, a smell that is warm and spicy, catching in the back of your throat and immediately slowing your pulse. It mingles with the smell of damp wool, the earthy scent of the hay still clinging to the boots of the faithful, and the sweet, fatty aroma of 1,000 burning beeswax candles. It is the smell of a world that is old, safe, and utterly removed from the biting indifference of the winter night. As you move deeper into the nave, the cold that has pursued you through the forest begins to dissipate, replaced by a slow and radiant warmth. This is not the fierce, localized heat of a domestic hearth, but a collective, living warmth generated by the hundreds of bodies pressed together in the pews. You find a place among your kin, the heavy kojuch of your coat brushing against the woolen shawls of your neighbours. The touch is soft and grounding. You feel the heat emanating from the person beside you, a gentle vibration of life that flows through the fabric and into your own chilled limbs. We are a congregation of survivors, huddled together in the belly of this great stone beast, our shared breath creating a pale, shimmering mist that hangs beneath the vaulted ceiling. The stone walls, several feet thick and cold to the external touch, act as a fortress, a protective shell that absorbs the howling of the wind and the groaning of the frozen trees, turning the violence of the storm into a distant, muffled whisper. You look upward, and your eyes are drawn to the architecture of the sanctuary, which feels less like a building and more like a stone womb, a primal space of safety and rebirth. The pillars of rough-hewn granite and limestone rise into the shadows like the trunks of a petrified forest, their surfaces smooth and cool where generations of hands have touched them. Candlelight flickers against the icons, the golden leaf on the altars glowing with a soft, pulsing light that makes the carved faces of the saints seem to breathe. Everything here is solid, permanent, and unyielding. The shadows are deep and velvet-like, reaching into the corners of the rafters and wrapping the congregation in a dark, protective blanket. You feel a sense of profound security, a realization that as long as you are within these walls, the white silence cannot touch you. The stone holds the memory of 1,000 winters, 1,000 midnight masses, and it remains unmoved, a silent witness to the continuity of life. Then the music begins, though it is less a melody and more a primordial vibration that seems to rise from the very stone themselves. It is the chant, a slow and monotonous chorale that fills the air with a rhythmic, low-frequency hum. The voices of the choir and the congregation join together in a single, unhurried stream of sound, a river of ancient syllables that flows over you like warm oil. There are no sudden leaps, no jarring notes. It is a steady, hypnotic pulse that mirrors the slow beating of a heart in deep sleep. You feel the vibration in your chest, a deep resonance that syncords your breathing with the rhythm of the chant. The sound is thick and heavy, absorbing the echoes and the rustle of the crowd, creating a sonic landscape where every voice is lost and found at the same time. It is a song that has no beginning and no end, a loop of sound that has been playing since the foundations of the world were laid. In the presence of this music and this stone, time begins to lose its grip. The linear world of hours, minutes, and the frantic passage of days dissolves, replaced by a state of eternal suspension. You lose track of how long you have been standing in the amber glow of the candles. The shadows on the wall do not seem to move. The flicker of the flames becomes a steady, unmoving radiance. It is as if the great clock of the universe has paused, its golden gears locked in a moment of perfect, holy stillness. You are caught in the nunc stans, the eternal now, where the past, the present, and the future are folded into a single shimmering point of light. The white silence of the exterior and the golden silence of the interior meet in your mind, creating a peace that is so deep it feels like a form of weightlessness. You are no longer a traveler in a frozen land. You are a permanent inhabitant of this moment of grace. The faces around you, illuminated by the soft golden light of the beeswax, seem to transcend their age and their station. The wrinkles on the brows of the elders look like the lines on ancient maps, and the smooth skin of the infants reflects the purity of the first snow. We are all suspended together in this stone sanctuary, a collective dream of warmth and light. The scent of the incense becomes more intoxicating as the service progresses, a heavy cloud that lulls the senses and invites the soul to wander. You close your eyes and the sound of the chant becomes the sound of the wind in the pines, the rustle of the golden sheaf, and the crackle of the hearth, all blended into a single divine frequency. Time has indeed stood still, leaving you anchored in the heart of the winter night, safe within the stone womb of the church, where the light of the first star has finally found its resting place. The Mass draws to its close, but the feeling of suspension remains. You watch as the candles are slowly extinguished, the smell of charred wicks and hot wax adding a final bittersweet note to the air. The silence that returns is even deeper than before, a sacred quiet that follows the end of the music. You feel the weight of your coat once more, the reality of your body returning to you as the congregation begins to stir. But as you prepare to walk back out into the blue light of the pre-dawn frost, you carry the sanctuary within you. The stone has lent you its strength, the incense has purified your breath, and the chant has steadied your heart. The white silence awaits you, but it is no longer a void. It is a landscape filled with the echoes of the midnight light. You step toward the door, the hay rustling beneath your boots for the last time, ready to greet the new day with the quiet, unyielding peace of the stone sanctuary. The heavy doors of the church swing shut behind us, and the resonant bronze echo of the bells begins to dissolve into the immense, sapphire void of the pre-dawn. The return journey is not like the arrival. The frantic energy of the evening has been replaced by a deep, meditative stillness that settles over the soul like a fall of fine, powdered snow. As we step away from the glowing amber threshold of the sanctuary, the world feels transformed once again. The river of torches that carried us here is now a receding memory, a flickering ribbon of light that is slowly being swallowed by the vastness of the Polish night. The torches themselves are tired now, their fierce orange flames having dwindled to small pulsing embers that struggle against the biting air. You can hear the soft rhythmic hiss of the burning resin as it meets the frost, a delicate sound like the sighing of a weary traveller. The scent of the burning pine has changed too, becoming heavier and more bitter, the aroma of charcoal and cooling ash mingling with the sharp, antiseptic purity of the frozen wind. The moon has claimed the sky, hanging like a polished silver coin in a vault of deep, bruised indigo. It is no longer the orange-tinted world of the firelight, but a landscape of ethereal, spectral blue. The moonlight spills across the valley in a silent, liquid tide, turning the white ocean of snow into a shimmering field of diamonds and sapphire shadows. Every tree, every drift, and every frozen stream is etched with a cold, crystalline clarity that was absent in the leaping shadows of the torches. You look at the path ahead, and it seems to glow with an inner, subterranean light, a pale and ghostly road that leads back to the heart of the forest. The silence of the return is profound. The collective sound of 100 boots has fractured into isolated, solitary notes as the villagers begin to peel away from the main path, their individual lights disappearing into the dark mooks of the trees like fading stars. You feel the weight of your sheepskin coat pressing against your shoulders with a comforting, familiar gravity. It has become a vessel for the night's memories. As you walk, the warmth of your body releases the scents trapped within the wool. The sweet, spicy ghost of the church incense, the faint perfume of the beeswax candle, and the dry, earthy smell of the hay from the table. It is as if you are carrying the sanctuary with you, wrapped in a cocoon of sensory history. Your face is cold, the skin of your cheeks feeling tight and porcelain smooth under the touch of the frost. But beneath the layers of fleece and wool, your heart is a glowing ember of contentment. The fatigue you feel is not a burden. It is a good fatigue, a heavy and holy tiredness that settles into your joints and lulls your mind into a state of beautiful rhythmic emptiness. Every step is a slow, deliberate conversation with the earth, a steady pulse that connects your tired limbs to the sleeping roots beneath the snow. The blue moonlight reveals the subtle textures of the winter world that the torches had hidden. You see the intricate patterns of the hoarfrost on the branches of the birches, looking like lace woven by the fingers of a silent, celestial queen. The shadows of the pines are long and distorted, stretching across the path like dark velvet fingers. There is no sound now but the rhythmic crunch of your own boots, a sound that has become a mantra, a steady sound that marks the passage of time in this timeless landscape. You feel a sense of profound emotional calmness, a quietening of the spirit that only comes after the great rituals are done. The excitement of the first star, the richness of the honey, and the power of the chant have all been absorbed, leaving behind a deep, tranquil pool of peace. The world is at rest, and you are resting within it, moving through the blue shadows with the grace of a dreamer. As you approach the familiar silhouette of your own home, the sight of the thin, wavering ribbon of smoke rising from the chimney brings a final, sharp ache of gratitude to your chest. The house looks like a small, dark island in a sea of moonlit blue, its windows dark and watchful. You reach the porch, and the sound of your boots on the wooden steps is a dull, hollow thud that echoes through the stillness of the clearing. You pause for a moment before entering, turning back to look at the valley one last time. The torches are gone now. The world is entirely blue and silver, a kingdom of ice and light that seems to hold its breath. The white silence has returned in its most majestic form, a silence that is not empty, but filled with the weight of the turning year and the promise of the coming sun. The return to the interior is a final, gentle transition. You lift the iron latch and the warmth of the cottage reaches out to meet you like an old friend. The air inside is still heavy with the scent of the solstice, the pine, the poppy seeds, and the cooling embers of the hearth. The golden sheaf remains in his corner, a golden sentinel in the shadows, his grain heads shimmering faintly in the moonlight that spills through the window. You shed your heavy coat, feeling the sudden lightness of your body, and you sink into the chair by the dying fire. The good fatigue finally takes hold, a heavy and velvet curtain that begins to fall across your eyes. The journey is over. The wood has been honored, the stone has been visited, and the stars have been followed. You close your eyes, the image of the blue moonlit path still etched on your mind as you surrender to a sleep that is as deep and peaceful as the snow outside your door. Before the heavy curtain of sleep can finally fall, there remains one final sacred duty to perform, a gesture of gratitude that reaches back to the very dawn of our kinship with the wild. You rise from the warmth of the hearth, your limbs heavy and slow with the good fatigue of the night, and you reach for the small wooden bowl on the dresser. Within it lies a fragment of the wafer, but it is not the pristine white of the bread shared at the table. This is a special piece, tinted a soft, dusty pink or a pale forest green, coloured with the juices of berries or herbs, to mark it as a gift for those who do not speak our tongue. You wrap your fingers around it, the wafer feeling as fragile and thin as a dried autumn leaf, and you pull your heavy sheepskin coat back over your shoulders. The house is silent now, the family already drifting into the world of dreams, leaving only you and the flickering shadows of the dying fire. You step out into the night one last time. The blue moon has climbed higher into the indigo vault, casting a light so cold and pure that the world seems to be made of glass and silver. The air is still, the wind having retreated into the deep valleys, leaving a silence so profound that you can hear the faint crystalline tinkling of the frost forming on the eaves. Your boots find the familiar path toward the stable, the sound of the snow now sounding like a hushed secret between you and the earth. As you approach the heavy timber doors of the animal sanctuary, you see the pale steam of their collective breath escaping through the cracks in the wood, a living mist that rises into the freezing air. This is the last threshold of the solstice, the place where the domestic meets the primal, and where the human heart hums in a different frequency. You lift the wooden latch, and as the door swings inward, you are met with a wall of scent and heat that is entirely different from the sanctuary of the house. This is a thick, visceral warmth, a heavy atmosphere generated by the massive slumbering bodies of the beasts. It is the smell of survival in its most honest form, the sweet, dusty aroma of dry hay, the earthy and pungent scent of damp straw, and the rich, musky perfume of warm fur and leather. It is a smell that is both ancient and deeply grounding, a fragrance that settles in your lungs and reminds you of the unbreakable bond between the shepherd and the flock. The darkness here is velvet black, broken only by the thin silver needles of moonlight that pierce through the knotholes in the walls, creating a landscape of dancing dust motes and shifting shadows. You move through the stable with a slow, reverent pace, your boots rustling in the thick carpet of straw. You can hear them before you see them. It is a rhythmic, symphonic sound of life, the deep, slow bellows of the cow's lungs, the occasional sharp snort of a horse, and the soft, liquid sound of rhythmic chewing. This is the music of the midnight stable, a steady percussion of contentment that vibrates through the very floorboards. You approach the first stall, where the great, dark shape of the ox resides. As you draw near, the beast shifts its weight, the heavy timber of the stall creaking under its mass. You reach out a hand, and your fingers find the velvet softness of its muzzle, a surface so fine and delicate it feels like the skin of a ripened peach. The animal's breath is a warm, moist cloud that blooms against your palm, smelling of fermented grass and the deep, sweet earth. You hold out the pink fragment of the wafer, and you feel the rough sandpaper texture of the animal's tongue as it carefully takes the offering from your hand. It is a moment of profound intimacy, a physical exchange of peace that transcends the boundaries of species. In this ritual, the animal is no longer a servant or a resource, but a brother in the mystery of existence. You moved the horses, their large dark eyes reflecting the sliver of moonlight like deep, still pools of water. They take the bread with a gentle, huffing sound, their whiskers tickling your skin. You feel the heat radiating from their powerful necks, a fierce and vibrant energy that seems to pulse in time with the turning of the year. This is the wafer for the silent ones, the bread that acknowledges their labor, their loyalty, and their shared place in the golden circle of the harvest. As the clock in the distant village tower strikes the midnight hour, the atmosphere in the stable shifts, becoming charged with a strange and heavy electricity. You find yourself leaning against the rough, splintered wood of a stall, your breath slowing to match the rhythm of the animals. This is the moment of the great legend, the time when the ancients believed that the veil between the worlds becomes so thin that the beasts are granted the gift of the human voice. It is said that at the stroke of 12 on this sacred night, the ox and the ass, the horse and the sheep, speak in the tongue of men, recounting the secrets of the world and the history of their long walk alongside us. You stand in the thick, fragrant darkness, your ears straining for a word, a sentence, or a whispered prophecy. But the silence that follows is not an absence of speech. It is a higher form of communication. You realize that the human voice of the legend is not found in syllables or grammar, but in the profound clarity of the silence itself, in the rhythmic grinding of the teeth as they chew the sun-dried hay. You hear the story of the summer fields. In the deep, resonant exhale of the lungs, you hear the song of the wind in the high pastures. The animals are speaking, but they are speaking through the language of presence, a mystical dialogue that bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the soul. You feel a sense of absolute connection, a realization that in this midnight hour, the divide between the observer and the observed has vanished. You are simply one more breathing creature in the dark, held in the protective embrace of the timber and the straw. This is the moment of mystical union with nature, the point where the white silence of the exterior and the warm silence of the stable become one and the same. You feel a deep, pulsing gratitude for these silent companions, for their strength that breaks the earth and their warmth that sustains the winter night. The stable is no longer just a building. It is a temple of the living, a place where the sacredness of life is stripped of all artifice and revealed in its raw, magnificent beauty. You stay there for a long time, lost in the hypnotic rhythm of their breathing, the scent of the hay, and the musk of the fir acting as a balm for your tired spirit. The world of the city, the world of the manor, and even the world of the cottage seem like distant, fading memories. Here, in the heart of the stable, there is only the heat, the breath, and the eternal now. Finally, The intensity of the hour begins to fade, the midnight energy settling into a deep and tranquil slumber. You give the heavy, warm neck of the horse one last pat, the fur feeling thick and coarse under your palm. The animals are returning to their rest, their heads drooping as they sink back into the golden dreams of the summer meadow. You turn toward the door, your heart feeling light and expanded, as if you have touched something vast and unutterable. You step back out into the blue moonlight, the cold air feeling sharp and refreshing after the heavy humidity of the stable. You pull the door shut, the latch clicking home with a sound of finality. The last duty is done. The circle is complete. As you walk back toward the cottage, the white silence feels different. It is no longer a void, but a living, breathing presence, a landscape that is populated by the voices of the forest and the dreams of the beasts. You look up at the stars, which seem to be pulsing with a new, more intimate light. You have shared the bread of peace with the silent ones, and in return they have given you a piece of their stillness. You reach the porch, kick the snow from your boots and step back into the dying warmth of the house. The solstice has turned, the light is coming, and in the deep velvet dark of the stable, the animals continue their long, rhythmic vigil over the rebirth of the world. You step back across the threshold into the main chamber, and the sudden silence of the room is so thick it feels like a heavy velvet curtain has been drawn behind you. The grand celebration, with its symphony of scents and voices, has finally drifted into the soft grey edges of the past. The room is still warm, holding on to the residual heat of the bodies that gathered here, and the rich, complex perfumes of the evening, the lingering sweetness of the honey, the earthy musk of the poppy seeds, and the sharp, resinous ghost of the forest. But now there is a new quality to the air, a sense of deep, heavy completion. The time for whispering to the ancestors and the animals has passed, and the house itself seems to be settling into its foundations, exhaling one long, slow breath of contentment as it prepares for the total surrender of sleep. You move slowly through the shadows, your footsteps cushioned by the carpet of dry, golden grass that still covers the floorboards. Your attention is drawn to the small, flickering lights that still dot the room, the last sentinels of the holy night. You approach the first candle, its flame a steady amber pyramid atop a pillar of golden wax. You lean in close, feeling the minute pulse of heat against your cheek, and you take a slow, deliberate breath. With a soft, sibilant purse of your lips, you release a tiny puff of air. There is a sharp, musical as the flame vanishes, replaced instantly by a thin, dancing ribbon of white smoke that spirals toward the rafters. You watch it rise, the scent of charred wick and hot liquid honey filling your nostrils for a fleeting second. One by one, you move to the others, repeating the ritual of the quiet death of the light. Each time you blow, a section of the room is reclaimed by the velvet dark, the long dancing shadows of the furniture shrinking and then disappearing into the void. Finally, only the hearth remains alive. The fierce, leaping flames of the evening have surrendered to a deep, pulsing bed of embers. They are like a collection of buried rubies, glowing with a fierce internal crimson that hums with a low-frequency heat. There is no more crackling, no more snapping of the wood. There is only the soft, rhythmic hiss of the charcoal as it breathes its last. The red glow casts a dim, bruised light across the room, illuminating the dark, polished surface of the table and the silhouette of the golden bundle of grain in the corner. The shadows no longer dance, they are still and heavy, resting in the corners like old dogs. This is the safe darkness of the interior, a darkness that does not hide predators, but instead provides a sanctuary for the soul. You feel the boundaries of the room closing in, wrapping you in a cocoon of warmth and silence that is as solid as the timber walls themselves. You turn toward the sleeping area, where the great, heavy bed of seasoned oak stands waiting. It is a massive structure, a monument to the permanence of the home, its frame thick and etched with the marks of the adze and the chisel. The mattress is a thick, yielding mountain, filled with the finest, driest straw or the softest down of 1,000 geese. As you sit upon the edge, the wood groans with a low, grounding resonance, a sound of absolute stability. You shed the last of your outer layers, the cold air of the room brushing against your skin for a brief, bracing second before you slide beneath the covers. This is the moment of total transformation. You are not merely pulling a blanket over yourself. You are entering a different state of being. The covers are a magnificent, heavy architecture of warmth. At the base lies a thick quilt, stuffed so densely with the feathers of the summer birds that it feels like a soft white cloud has been tethered to the bed. Above this, you pull up the heavy furs, thick, matted pelts of the wolf or the bear, their weight so immense and substantial that it pins you to the mattress. This is a deliberate, therapeutic pressure, a sensation of being held in a firm, unyielding embrace that commands your nervous system to go quiet. You can feel the weight of the pelts on your chest, on your legs, and on your feet, a heavy and comforting gravity that seems to push the last of the day's tensions out of your body and into the earth. Beneath this mountain of down and fur, the heat is instantaneous and absolute. It is a private, secret climate that you have created with your own body, a pocket of summer preserved in the heart of the winter night. You feel the warmth pooling around your toes, rising up your limbs and settling in the small of your back. It is a dense, radiant heat, a heat that smells of cedarwood, old wool, and the faint, sweet scent of the dried grass beneath the bed. You are utterly insulated, a tiny pulsing spark of life protected by layers of feathers, skin, and timber. Outside, the world is locked in a fierce blue frost. You can hear the wind as it strikes the eaves of the house, a long, mournful howl that seeks a way inside, but it is a distant, impotent sound. It cannot reach you here. The white silence may possess the forest, but the interior of the bed is a realm of golden, heavy safety. You lie perfectly still, your breath slowing until it matches the slow, rhythmic pulse of the dying embers. Your eyes, now fully adjusted to the deep crimson twilight, drift upward to the ceiling. There, suspended from the central beam, is the dark silhouette of the hanging forest, the inverted evergreen branch that has watched over the entire night. In the dim light, it looks like a living, breathing creature, its needles casting a complex, lacy shadow across the rafters. You can still smell it. A faint, clean perfume of crushed pine and cold sap that cuts through the heavy warmth of the bedding. It is the last thing you see, the green heart of the woods hanging between the earth and the sky, a sentinel of life that will guard your dreams until the morning. The house begins to speak to you in the language of the night. You hear the minute, rhythmic creaks of the logs as they contract in the cooling air, a sound like the settling of bones. You hear the soft internal rustle of the straw mattress as it adjusts to your weight. These are not noises of the unknown, they are the familiar domestic sounds of a structure that is alive and watchful. You feel the heavy quilt rising and falling with your chest, a gentle tactile percussion that lulls you deeper into the velvet dark. The isolation of the Polish landscape, the miles of snow, and the vast indigo sky are all forgotten. There is only the weight of the furs, the warmth of the feathers, and the deep amber peace of the sanctuary. The boundary between the waking world and the realm of the eternal begins to blur. You are no longer thinking, no longer remembering. You are simply existing in a state of profound sensory satiety. The scent of the honey, the taste of the poppy seeds, the sound of the chant, and the touch of the heavy furs blend into a single shimmering frequency of contentment. You are sinking, falling into a sleep that is as deep and as ancient as the soil beneath the house. It is a sleep that is not just a rest for the body, but a pilgrimage for the soul, a journey into the quiet, golden center of the world where the seasons never turn and the fire never goes out. The last of the embers in the hearth fades into a dull grey ash, and the room is surrendered to the perfect holy darkness of the solstice night. And so the first star has finally set, and the carols fade into the gentle silence of the night. We slowly close the heavy cover of our book, placing the memories of the feast back on the shelf. The fire in the hearth has burned down to glowing embers. keeping you warm and protected. There is nothing left to do, no more traditions to honor, only rest. If you found peace in these pages and wish to find your way back to our sanctuary, simply subscribe to the library, and we shall meet again tomorrow night. You are safe. You are tired. Sleep now. Deepest sleep. Good night.